Welcome, everyone. Good morning. It is Wednesday, January 21st, and we have now less than 3 years left of Donald Trump in office. So that's good. We're officially a little bit more than 25% of the way done with his administration, but we do still have 3 years left. Before we get started today, because I got a lot of different stories I want to talk about, I want to take a moment to just kind of mention something real quick, because I've seen a lot of comments, both in the live and some on videos, of people either saying like, "Oh wow, so glad you're back," and then people like, "Oh wow, a live stream." We have been doing these live streams every day, Monday through Friday, since December 1st. So this is not new. It is something that I do now every morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. So if you are new here, or if this is your first time seeing it, welcome. But this is not just a crazy thing I'm just doing one off. Nope, it's an everyday type thing. So please do tune in Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Central Time. And of course, the so many comments saying like, "Oh, so glad you're back. I've missed you." I haven't stopped doing this. I did not go away. I have still produced content for this channel every single day since we started on November 4th in the year 2020. There's not been a single day that I've not had new content. So I'm not sure what the welcome back comments or "I've missed you" comments are about, but I've gone nowhere. The only thing I did do, of course, was leave Ring of Fire at the end of November. And I did multiple different videos throughout that time, letting people know that I'm still going to be doing content here. Apparently, though, it was brought to my attention recently, some of those videos were removed from Ring of Fire. So maybe that's what caused the confusion. I'm not even sure why they took those down, like my goodbye video. That's a little, I'm a little annoyed by that, but whatever. It is what it is. But I'm here. I'm doing this every day. And of course, even on days when there's not live streams, Sunday and Saturday, there are in fact new videos every day. Let's get down to it. Thank you so much for letting me explain all of that, because I really did wanted to let everybody know that, because I'm getting a ton of comments about it. So thank you all for bearing with me for just a moment while I went through that. Now, let's move on, because yes, Donald Trump is giving his unhinged speech in Davos right now, but none of that's going to matter. Okay? What matters is the United States economy. Thanks to Donald Trump's invasion of Venezuela, and of course his hyper obsession now with getting his hands on Greenland, one of the things that has been flying under the radar with the Epstein files, by the way, is the US economy. When all of this started, the talk of the economy, inflation, affordability, all of that kind of took a back seat to Donald Trump's insanity. But yesterday, the problems with the US economy became too big to ignore, because everything tanked. And as of this morning, even more horrible economic things are happening inside of the United States. But let's start with what happened on Tuesday. Now, of course, markets were not open on Monday here in the United States. So all of the insanity that Trump did over the weekend, threatening the Prime Minister of Norway, threatening tariffs against the European Union, none of that could affect the markets on Monday because they were closed. Tuesday, they open up and everything goes into a tailspin. Dow Jones down, what was it? 600 points. S&P 500 fell by 1.5%. NASDAQ Composite dropped by 1.8%. U.S. bond prices staggered. And of course, The value of the dollar dropped by 1%, its biggest drop since Donald Trump's so-called Liberation Day tariffs last April. So the few measures of the economy here in the United States that we're doing okay, right? Because the stock market, mostly rich people's money, has been pretty good last year. It keeps rising, keeps going up. So on paper, because we only look at the stock market as a gauge of the economy, which is the dumbest thing we do as a country, but on paper, it looked like, oh, everything's actually not that bad economically. And then our insane president, with his combination of crazy and stupid, can come out, do a couple of weird things over the weekend, threaten global stability essentially, and suddenly it sends those good economic markers into a tailspin. Now, the market can recover. In fact, this morning, the Dow's already up 282 points. So maybe it's going to come back. Or maybe as this moron speaks in Davos, the markets are going to go back down, which seems to be the most likely scenario there. But this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of bad economic news that we got. Because again, those things can rebound. They can fluctuate from day to day, from hour to hour. So it's kind of difficult to say the whole economy's in the toilet just because the market had a bad day and rich people lost some money. No, you got to look a little deeper than that to see how horrible things truly are. This is part of a trend. And it's a trend that investors and Wall Street insiders are calling the Sell America movement. Because this is not investors in the United States that are getting spooked. These are the overseas investors. These are the countries like Denmark and, as of this morning, Sweden, who are pulling their investments out of the United States. That is the damaging part of this. So whatever Donald Trump says or has said in Davos doesn't matter. The damage is already done. Sweden is not going to turn around after announcing this morning they're pulling out of the US Treasury market and then say, oh, okay, we'll put that money right back. That's not going to happen. Denmark, the state pension funds, not all of them, but some of them held in US bond markets, they pulled those out yesterday. Sweden pulls out today. This is a trend, and it is going to continue as we see more of these European countries that Donald Trump continues to threaten pull out of the United States. This is exactly what economists have been predicting with Donald Trump's unpredictability. This is a continuation of what economists have been telling us 6 months ago, because that was when Donald Trump started his attacks on Jerome Powell. And at the time, I sat here, right, talking about, the economists saying these things, but the economists told us at the time, if other countries look at the United States and they start viewing the Federal Reserve as no longer independent and instead something that Donald Trump himself controls, they'll pull out of the US. If they do that, the dollar will topple and it will no longer become the favored global currency. Other currencies, possibly even the euro, will take its place as the global standard. Okay, of all those things happening, we're like 80% of the way there. Okay, 80% of all what economists predicted has now happened. It's happening as we speak, with these other countries pulling their money out of the United States. All that's left at this point is for the dollar to lose even more value and be replaced as the global standard. When that happens, the economic might of the United States, our ability to borrow money from other countries as we rack up tremendous amounts of debt, goes away. It doesn't just diminish, it goes away. And even if we can limp along for just a couple more months trying to get things right, it won't matter because what happens in May? Jerome Powell's term as Fed chair ends. When that ends, Trump gets to pick the replacement, and it's most likely going to be his economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, who has said that affordability doesn't exist and people need to suck it up. Prices aren't going up. So he's a Trump sycophant. And at that point in May, Trump will control the Fed. So if all of these horrible predictions, the rest of them, I guess I should say, from economists haven't come to fruition by that time, they will when we hit that point. So right now we are on borrowed time with the economy. And we saw it play out yesterday. Again, it is playing itself out right now as other countries are pulling their money, saying, we're not going to be a part of this. We do not trust it. This man can tank the economy with a post on Truth Social. We're not going to be a part of that. That would be very dumb to invest our country's, government pensions in this market where if this guy says something stupid in a press briefing, we lose all of our retirement. Why would we do that? Honestly, kind of shocked they hadn't already done it a year ago, knowing this going into it. But it is what it is. And that's where we're at with the economy that continues to tank due to Donald Trump's combination of insanity and stupidity. Now, let's get to some comments here. It says, I heard somewhere that just because his term as Fed chair ends, Powell can choose to stay on the board. Yes, but that's also why they've launched that investigation into him. The other outside pressures are going to force Powell out. So let's not forget about those other things happening. Trump is going to get rid of Powell one way or the other. And if his term ends and he doesn't leave, Trump is going to be like, well, no, his term ended. Of course I had to fire him. So it will happen. Scorpius ZA says, I just realized that with Europe was holding that much of the U.S. bonds, they were essentially funding the military threats against them. Without the bonds, the effect of the budget will be interesting. That is a very good point. Like, you're propping up the very people that you're fighting against or that want to fight against you. So the very people that are trying to seize your territories are the people you've been given money to fund the military to possibly threaten to seize your territories. Another one here from Paula Trigg says, why do I feel like the proverbial lobster in the pot as the heat gets continuously increased and we don't realize we are being boiled alive until it is too late? The good thing is that we're not the lobsters in the pot. We do realize this. We do see it. But we're looking at the other lobsters who are telling us, no, the pot's not getting hotter. And we're like, no, we've got a thermometer right here. Like, the temperature is going up. And they're the ones who allow this to happen and in many cases enable it to happen. Here's one, says, last night I heard that if we attack Greenland, some effects will be that any American out of the country will be stuck where they are and international American businesses will be discontinued. Any thoughts? Yeah, that is a real possibility. We have already seen, obviously, the Europeans or French economist Gabriel Zucman, he came out and said, what we need to do is basically freeze out American businesses, American millionaires and billionaires in order to force them to get pissed off, to hold Trump accountable, to make him stop. So I do think that that is a possibility. And honestly, I kind of feel like that's a pretty good idea too. Another one here says, tariff case at SC is about if IEEPA gives Trump unilateral tariff powers. If Supreme Court says no, then there are other more limited statutes he can try to use, all of which will also be challenged. And that's part of their, plan to keep the tariffs in place. And that way, if it gets challenged, well, that's another 8 months down the road before the Supreme Court could possibly issue a decision. And in the meantime, he'll get to keep doing it. So Even if the Supreme Court repeatedly tells him no, he'll just try it a new way and then wait about a year for them to say yes or no on that too. So the tariffs are not going away no matter what. V-Man says, when is Trump ordering sharks with freaking lasers? I have to imagine it soon. I mean, we're getting a base on the moon like Dr. Evil. So yeah, the sharks with the freaking laser beams on their heads, they may already be working on it. And I say that in jest, but also not joking either. Mogal says, someone help wake us up from this nightmare before it gets any worse. I wish I could. I really genuinely wish there was something I could do or say to try to make things a little bit better, but we're stuck. Let's move on real quick. Still talking about Europe, obviously not super happy with Donald Trump. On Tuesday, a member of the European Parliament, Danish lawmaker Anders Vistisen, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Anders Vistisen gets up at the European Parliament in France, his turn to speak, and he had a message for Donald Trump. His message was, quote, "Let me put this in words you might understand. Mr. President, fuck off." Simple message. Danish lawmaker, obviously not happy about Donald Trump wanting to seize Greenland, not happy about the tariffs that Donald Trump says are going into effect on February 1st. So his message on the floor of the European Parliament is, Donald Trump, fuck off. And unfortunately, this lawmaker was immediately censured for that because that kind of language broke the rules. Now, here is what the official told Vistisen. "I'm sorry, colleague, this is against our rules. As much as you or the room might feel in this, we have clear rules about curse words, language that is inappropriate in this room. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it is unacceptable, even if you might have strong political feelings about this." And honestly, I'm not happy that the lawmaker did kind of get censured like that, although censures are worthless, stupid things that mean nothing. But I do love that whoever was in charge was like, look, I get it, okay? The room gets it. We may all be feeling that right now. And I'm really sorry to have to interrupt you, but no cursing. That is about as mild of a censure as you can get. It's like the old Yeller moment. You know, like, I don't want to have to put you down because I love you, but I'm required to do this just to save face a little bit. So here we go. But, you know, a wink and a nod, like, we all get it, okay? You can't speak like that. I love it. It was wonderful. Here's a comment from Dawn Whitehead. It says, "I think there's a flaw in the Constitution. No Republican is willing to invoke the 25th Amendment or impeach and remove him from office. We have no recourse." And we don't have lawmakers like Vistisen. Like, I want to see that happen. And sure, they'll get in trouble if they do it on the floor of the House of Representatives or on the floor of the Senate, but by God, do it. Right? You want to make a name for yourself? You want to get into the headlines? There you go. That's a great way to do it. So any lawmaker looking to, you know, raise your profile a little bit, that's your thing. But as for, you know, the comment regarding the 25th Amendment, I believe once Trump leaves office, because you're not going to be able to do it prior to that, we do need to amend the amendment, which means create a new amendment to kind of alter that. And it needs to be that Congress can invoke it, or similar to actually creating a constitutional amendment, I think we should allow the states, the state government or a majority of people in each state to be able to invoke the 25th Amendment. Um, so I do think there are some remedies we could do, obviously not now, but in the future. And I think that would be able, to maybe prevent a situation like this in the future, because probably years from now, what's going to happen is we are going to find out that Donald Trump was in fact suffering from like late stage dementia and nobody did anything. And it's at that point, when the doctors finally come clean, or when, the medical report comes out because it happened, um, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, okay, well, maybe we ought to change something so that what everybody sees, we can act on. So that may be the moment when that finally happens, because we'll get a medical report when it happens. And I think it's going to tell us a lot about how bad the brain really is. Some super chats here. It says, you may not be able to stop the real nightmare, but I think I speak for everyone. Thank you for being a smart and practical reporter and political commentator. You have no obligation to answer our super chats, but it's appreciated. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And, I love what I do here. I genuinely enjoy this every day. And I think that's kind of evidenced from the fact that the live streams just continue to get longer like every day. And I don't even feel good today. I actually feel very sick today. I've got a horrible brain fog, but I'm still doing it because I don't want to not do this, because I enjoy it. So thank you. I'm glad you all enjoy it, but I enjoy it as well. Another super chat here, massive thank you so much, says, hey, Farron, I'm curious. What is the threat Trump has on these call girls we call politicians that is making them incompetent and spineless? Or do you think that this is just the truth coming out about these ass clowns? First of all, I love the way you phrase that. I think this is what they want. Most of them want most of it, I guess. Maybe not every single thing, but enough of the things to not put up a stink about the things they don't like. So this is their true colors coming out. This is who these Republicans are. These are things that they may not have ever vocalized, but deep down, they probably want it as well. So I think that's a big reason why we're seeing so much spinelessness from these idiots. V-Man says, we need to change the Constitution that allows a vote of no confidence, like how the British Parliament can kick out terrible leaders. I agree. I 100% agree. And it shouldn't just be the president either. We should be able to do it with the Speaker of the House, over in the Senate as well. We, the people, need to have more control over our politicians, other than every 2 or 6 years or 4 years for president, we get to vote yes or no. That's not good enough. We need to be able to 6 months into a term be like, nope, F this guy, get the hell out. Or look at a lawmaker and say, you know what? You're 90 years old and announced you're running for re-election. Piss off. We're going to vote you out now. You don't even know who you are or where you are anymore. We're getting rid of you. So yes, I think it needs to be very expansive with whatever we do, if we can get to the point of getting that amendment done. Another one says, what do you think of Mark Davis running for Congress out of Florida? I like the energy he brings. I'd like to see you two have an uncensored conversation together. I don't know a ton about Mark Davis, to be honest with you. I have not, even though I'm from Florida, unless we're like right in truly the heart of an election season, I'm not really paying attention to the politicians over here, especially with what's happening, in the executive branch right now. So I have kind of lapsed a bit on that, unfortunately. Also, Mark Davis, as far as I know, obviously is not from my part of the state. So it's also a lot harder to, get involved in that, because I don't think people truly understand the scope of the state of Florida. Like, it is a 17-hour drive to get from where I am all the way down to South Florida. It is a big state. It is an incredibly diverse state. It is, honestly, it should be multiple states, especially with the way kind of it's broken down. It's like different worlds. we have nothing in common with the people in Orlando, who have nothing in common with the people in Miami, who have nothing in common with the people of Key West, other than we all live in Florida and we're all still part of the same state for some reason. So it's a very weird place. Most honestly, big states are like that too, but Florida often gets overlooked in just the sheer geographical size of it. So sometimes, obviously, it's harder to keep track because it's like being in a different world. Another super chat here says, I visited New York and Philadelphia in 2024 with my dad. I saw Empire State, Statue of Liberty, and others. Considering it was a first time visiting America, I genuinely enjoyed everything about it. I'm not going back until Trump is gone. Greetings from Ireland. Well, thank you very much for the super chat. I really do appreciate that. And yeah, look, I mean, I've only been to Pennsylvania once, went to Philadelphia for a couple days. It was great. New York is absolutely one of my most favorite places on planet Earth, New York City. It's so amazing and it's so overwhelming, especially, I come from an area where we don't have the tallest building is 8 stories tall in my town, 8 stories. And that's like in the, general vicinity. You have to travel more than an hour away to find a building that's taller than 8 stories. So the first time I went to New York, it was massively overwhelming. And I've been back dozens of times since then. And the Statue of Liberty is really cool. My sister, one time, my other sister had paid for a trip for all of us, all of our families to go there a couple years ago, right before COVID, actually. And we got to go up into the Statue of Liberty, into the crown, which, we were all super excited about. But I was like 250 pounds at the time. And those steps are tiny and tall. And there's a lot of them. And I have asthma. So climbing up the top of the Statue of Liberty while being like 100 pounds overweight with asthma, God almighty, that was awful. But when I got up there and could finally catch my breath and I saw the view for a few seconds and then they're like, okay, you guys have to go. The next group is coming. But I'll never forget it. My wife had just had knee surgery. God. And so she was luckily like with me, and my brother-in-law was, he was heavy set. So we're all just like in the back dying while the rest of the family, who's in good shape, are like, come on, guys, this is super fun. But anyway, totally off topic there. But it is something I'll never forget. And I do appreciate my sisters making that happen. Another super chat from Gargoyle Dragon here says, I'd love to see someone rack up censures like Stallone and Demolition Man, just stand in front of the penalty distributor and cuss at it. That would be fun. I know that states can have recall elections. What needs to happen for it to be allowed on the national level? That would also take a constitutional amendment, which 100% in favor of. To give a laugh, according to my UK friend, like how gay was once a common word for happy, for the UK, Trump is an old word for fart. So it's not inaccurate to say we have a president fart. I like it. V-Man says, we need the next Dem president to be symbolically torch a copy of the Monroe Doctrine. We need an approach to Latin America that fosters brotherhood. I agree 100%. And for those of you who may not, be totally familiar with it, the Monroe Doctrine, I actually mentioned it a couple weeks ago in a video, and the Roosevelt whatever edition, and now the Trump Doctrine with it, basically says the United States gets to do whatever the hell we want in Latin America. And, South America to a degree as well. But basically, this whole hemisphere, if the U.S. doesn't like what you're doing, Europe can't say anything about it. We're the ones who get to go in and be the police. Absolutely insane. Let's move on, folks. I do have a couple other things I really do want to get to here. Let's talk about the Trump administration and how these officials are completely out of touch with reality. Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Agriculture, obviously came out recently and said that Americans can feed themselves for $3 a meal with a piece of chicken, piece of broccoli, a corn tortilla, and another thing. We don't know what the other thing is, but those are the things you can have for a meal in the United States for $3. Sounds like the worst combo meal imaginable. But that is what Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins said. And she came to that conclusion after running over 1,000 simulations. Like, they had to use AI and supercomputers for her to come up with the most bland white person meal ever. A piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, a corn tortilla, and another thing. But Brooke Rollins came out this week defending her "let them eat a piece of chicken" statement and said this: "I don't want any funny business with numbers. Like, I really want to know what that looks like, because we had run almost 1,000 simulations, and between $3 and $4 is a fair number if you can have access to that food." Okay, so you're already admitting that it's not a fair number because not everybody has access to that food. So a real number would be a number for food that everybody has access to. Because you can't just say, like, listen, you could eat for $1 a day if all you're eating is unicorn meat, but not everybody has access to unicorn meat, folks. So, the rest of y'all, you're going to pay a little more because you're not eating our unicorns. That's how realistic this is. But she continued to make it worse. So just about an hour ago, I saw new numbers that were run a full day, meaning 3 full square meals and a snack, is about $15.64. That's all, 3 meals and a snack. So we'll be talking more about that in the coming days and weeks. I grew up with a single mom in a really small town and certainly never meant to be flippant, but I also think that the left, or those that were attacking me, perhaps know that this is an issue that 90% of Americans agree on. You can't argue with the American public when they tell you we can't afford food. But that is what she's doing. She's like, no, yes, you can. I ran 1,000 simulations. We have a supercomputer. Oh, look at this, $3 a meal. If you're spending more than that, then you're a dumb moron. Is that really the message you want to go with, Brooke? Because I don't think it is. But that is the one you are going with. But don't worry, because she's not even as out of touch as Scott Bessent. I don't know if it's Bessent or Bessent, and honestly, I don't give a shit. But Scott Bessent, a billionaire, went on Maria Bartiromo's show on Fox News and said that, because she asked him, like, hey, we got a housing crisis here in the United States. Homes are unaffordable. We've got, these groups that are snatching up all the available homes. What do we do about it? Scott Bessent said, we are going to give guidance at some point to see what a mom and pop is. Someone, maybe your parents for their retirement, have bought 5, 10, 12 homes. So we don't want to push the mom and pops out. We just want to push everybody else out. Your parents, or perhaps you, if you're retired, the housing crisis in the United States is caused by you guys because you went and bought 5 or 10 or 12 houses. Who amongst us does not have a parent that owns at least half a dozen houses? Am I right, folks? I mean, these boomers and even, some of the older ones just buying up houses every other day. That is not now, nor has it ever been a thing that has happened. It's not mom and pop are buying a house every other year that's causing the housing crisis. It's BlackRock. It's all of these other, major institutions, the hedge funds that are buying up, in some instances, entire neighborhoods. That's the problem. It's not mom and pop. Mom and pop don't have that kind of money. But I can understand how, if you're a billionaire, you probably think they do. And you probably think a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, a corn tortilla, and another thing is what Americans want to eat every day for every meal. But this is what this administration is telling us. They're telling us you're not broke. You guys are actually causing the problems that you're whining about. Maybe you ought to knock that off. Maybe you ought to eat better. Stop eating like a pig. Stop eating those artificial colors in your foods because that's your real problem. No, it's not. Okay. The problem is we have a president who is likely suffering from advanced dementia, who is also suffering from multiple different psychological symptoms, and he goes insane on social media, threatens tariffs, puts tariffs in place in many instances beyond just threatening them. Prices go up for us and we can't afford things. That's the problem. But y'all won't address that because the guy doing it is your boss. So you would rather look into a camera and tell us that we're the problem than have to confront the psycho crazy guy that you work for. Tons of super chats came through. I do want to get to these. I may miss some. I'm sorry. I don't know how far up this they go here. Let's see. When thinking of the devil, my mental image used to be of a red face with horns, but now it's an orange face accompanied by a rather poor comb over. Yeah, sometimes, folks, you just got to admit when you're going bald and you just got to deal with it. Started at 19, by the way. And it was rough at first. Not easy being a college kid losing your hair. But hey, it happens. Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. It was a full diaper. There have been so many videos that I've seen recently that purportedly show Donald Trump having an accident, including, by the way, there is now speculation that during his weekend meeting with the fossil fuel executives where he randomly got up and went to the window, a lot of people think he did that to go poop his pants. I'm not making that up either. I'm not saying he did, but I'm saying a lot of people thought that maybe he was doing that to go make a number one or a number two. Paula Trigg says, if that is the case, my son should spend $1,407.60 pretty month for food for himself and 2 kids. He gets $785 in food stamps since losing his job. I'm very sorry to hear about that. But yeah, that is what this administration thinks should be able to happen. And it can't happen. Because here's the thing. And I did want to mention this actually in the segment, but kind of started going in other ways. It's not just the cost of the food. Because when you go to the store and you buy raw ingredients, is that a meal? No, it's not. You have to have electricity or gas to cook the food. So there's more money. You have to have something to cook the food in. You have to have pots and pans and baking dishes and all kinds of stuff. So there's more money. I mean, those are some of the things that, you know, when you move out of your parents' house for the first time, you're on your own. A lot of times you forget, like, oh crap, like, how do I cook food? I have to go buy pots and pans. I have to go buy cups and plates and all of this. And of course, you don't want to sit there and eat a bland piece of chicken and broccoli and corn tortilla and another thing. You have to get some seasonings. And let's face it, those things are also not cheap. I mean, salt, sure. Pepper's not cheap. That's crazy. Garlic, onion powder, you know, if you want to venture out and go into better spices and seasonings, that stuff becomes, you know, $4 or $5 a bottle for something you may only use one time for one recipe. Food is more expensive than just the cost of the item itself is the point. And this administration, who probably thinks salt is a little too spicy, they don't seem to understand that. One more story I definitely want to get to, because this one is hilarious. Lindsay Halligan, the U.S. Attorney for Western Virginia, was told by a judge this week, you better stop calling yourself the U.S. Attorney for Western Virginia. Lindsay Halligan was told months ago by the courts, you were improperly appointed, basically illegally appointed, You're not the U.S. attorney of anywhere. And Lindsay Halligan, who was told, pack your shit and get out, never left. She just stayed. And she continued to call herself the U.S. attorney for Western Virginia. And yes, that is how she spelled it on her official court filing. She misspelled the word Virginia and wrote it as Virginia many, many times. So I could understand the judge obviously having an issue with that, right? That's not where you're the U.S. attorney from. No. But this week, U.S. District Judge David Novak issued a ruling blasting Halligan for continuing to call herself the U.S. attorney from anywhere, and said this: Miss Halligan's response contains a level of vitriol more appropriate for a cable news talk show and falls far beneath the level of advocacy expected from litigants in this court, particularly the Department of Justice. The court will not engage in a similar tit-for-tat. Miss Halligan and anyone who joins her on a pleading that continues to call her a U.S. attorney subjects themselves to potential disciplinary action in this court pursuant to the court's local rules. In other words, the judge said, anybody who walks into this court, whether it's Lindsay Halligan herself or if it's anyone else, you come into my courtroom and you call this person a U.S. attorney, then I am going to punish you because she is not a U.S. attorney. She cannot call herself a U.S. attorney. And by God, I am not going to suffer that in my courtroom, especially after she comes in here acting like an asshole. That's what that ruling was. He was mad because of her horrific attitude and behavior. And he's like, you know what? F you. Here's what I'm going to rule. I love that. I love Judge Novak. This is great. I want to see more of this from more judges. But also, I want to see Lindsay Halligan on video carrying all of her stuff out of that office in Virginia, not Virginia, in a box and having to put it in the back of her car. And you know what? I hope stuff falls out on the way to her car. I hope she's walking with her little box and the bottom just falls out of it. That's what I want to see happen. And again, I want somebody to capture that on video. That would be true comedy to me. Something that the best comedy writers in the world wouldn't even be able to come up with because it would be so hilarious. But that is what she deserves. This is an individual who was an insurance lawyer, not a prosecutor, never prosecuted a case in her life, just like Judge Cannon before she was appointed as a judge, or had never handled a criminal case. I'm sorry. So we got an insurance lawyer masquerading as a U.S. attorney, continues to call herself a U.S. attorney, even though the courts have said you are not a U.S. attorney. And it's absolutely insane. I mean, calling yourself a U.S. attorney when you're clearly not one, I mean, that's almost like taking somebody else's Nobel Peace Prize and showing it off saying you won it, right? I mean, who would do that? Because that's just crazy talk from crazy people, which is what we have come to expect from this administration. Listen, I got to get out of here, folks. Tons of content coming up throughout the rest of the day. If you are not already subscribed, please do. And equally as important, share the content. And as I mentioned yesterday, don't just share my stuff. I love it. I appreciate it. And I want you to continue. Share other creators as well. Help spread the word. Help grow everybody. We are all in this together. We rise together. We fall together. So all of us need you. We appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. I saw a couple more super chats came through. Unfortunately, again, I got so much other content I got to get busy with. Thank you all so much. I will see you again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Central, right here.